think I've eluded him. I've been wanting to talk about this game, Blackout, for a while, and, you know, I have to be a little bit careful because I think the designer didn't necessarily want me to speak about it, but thankfully I think he's unaware that I'm recording today. So let's get on with this thing. So, Blackout, and... oh, crying out loud. I guess he found out. Oh well, yeah, ironic, yeah, using the Blackout when I'm talking about Blackout. Oh well, I better sort this out. Ah! Hello all, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and today it's Blackout by Alexander Pfister and Eggertspiel Games. If anything could be considered a hype train for this year, this would be one of the poster childs for it. It was kind of frankly ridiculous. I remember going to Essen with some knowledge about, okay, people are looking forward to another game by Alexander Pfister. Fair enough, you know, his other games are really popular and I still have Isle of Skye on my shelf. But this one just confused me. Because anytime I asked anybody, and I mean anybody, who was excited for this game coming out, I would ask them, you know, normal questions about it, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, I'm going to go grab a copy as soon as it's there. Alright, what do you know about it? Nothing? Okay, well, what's the game about? Dunno. Blackout. Okay, have you seen what it looks like? Nope. Do you know about the mechanics? Nope. What do you know about it? Alexander! That's literally what it was like. People just, for some reason, jumped on this hype train purely by designer alone. I don't even remember they mentioned about Eggertspiel. I'd be more interested about the fact the game comes from Eggertspiel than I would about, you know, no offense, the designer, just because Eggertspiel's put out a lot of interesting games lately. You know, Coimbra and the re-edition of Camelot, you know, really good, and... you know, what else have they done? I know they've done others, but, you know, they're certainly on a roll right now, let's put it that way. But, yeah, everyone just basically was jumping on this train, not even knowing where the destination was. Well, the destination is Blackout. So, is it as good as the hype train says it is? Let's find out. Hong Kong has been struck by a large-scale, unexpected blackout. As the government struggles to maintain control, you decide to take matters into your own hands and try to bring back some kind of societal order. Daily life, as you were used to, has quickly dissolved. Even the most mundane tasks become incredibly challenging without electric power. Whoever best manages this situation and restores the semblance of order will surely claim a position of power in post-blackout Hong Kong. In this hot new Eurogame, you will have to manage ever-changing resources and a network of various specialists to keep Hong Kong from descending into chaos while also staying ahead of your rivals. The crux of this game revolves around a deck of cards that you will be playing on your player board in order to trigger their effects. You play them in several columns, but when you collect your cards back is dependent on how big the column is and how many cards you have left in your hand. You will collect various resources such as medikits, foods, tools and gasoline in order to complete multiple objectives during the game. Some are already on your board, some are dished out during the game via the deck. You will purchase these cards with money as your currency, and you will attempt to complete as many of these as you can for victory points while settling your cubes on the map as locations. If the dice aren't enough to collect your resources, you can also scout locations during the game in order to obtain bonuses that way, but you won't know what's there until you go take a look for yourself, and in doing so, you risk one of your specialists getting killed or injured in the process. Clever hand management is vital to succeeding in Blackout Hong Kong. What are my thoughts? Let's find out. So that's a general overview of how Blackout works. Now what's the theme and mechanics like? Well, let's start with the theme and the aesthetics. Theme is mildly represented here. It's supposed to be a blackout in Hong Kong, but it could be any location in the world. The fact that it's Hong Kong is barely even recognizable on the board or in any of the cards that you actually play. The blackout theme is mainly just to facilitate the idea that I swear the publisher or the designer just didn't want to spend any money on artwork. The aesthetics of this game are questionable to say the least. The board is just basically one big collage of black with location lines all over it. That's pretty much it. In fact, the most colourful thing in this game is probably the 3 dice you roll for resources. And even they are just the basic blue, yellow, red dice. There you go, there's your essence of colour. The cards themselves are pretty basic. The graphic design is fairly easy to understand, which is a plus. But again, there's not much artwork on the cards as well. It's all kept fairly basic. And I have to just conclude that this game is not a looker when it hits the table. Most people aren't really that engrossed by what you're doing because all they see is black everywhere. I know you're trying to make this about a blackout, but maybe the blackout wasn't the best theme to pick, or maybe there was another way of doing this, but yeah, artistically, it just seems like, oh well, at least I don't have to spend too much on artwork because, well, there's very little in it. I don't like looking at a board made up of entirely black with cubes. There's nothing in this game I can consider to look good. You know, the currency is just flimsy cardboard. The cards. Oh my god, I nearly forgot the cards. The cards. Oh dear god. If you are apprehensive about sleeving your game, don't be for this. You have to sleeve this game. You have to sleeve it the minute you open the box, because as soon as you even breathe on these cards, you'll start seeing wear and tear because they're black bordered and they're linen finish, but it's a really bad quality linen finish because after like 2 games of this, I'm already seeing scuff marks all over the cards. And because they're mostly black, you can see the scuff marks stand out from a mile away because the white scuff marks on a black bordered card just make them look cheap. It doesn't break the game in the sense of, oh, I know that card's coming up now, but when you're not exactly looking at great artwork to begin with, do you really want to have scuff marks all over your cards? So sleeve them immediately. There's a top tip for you. If you're going to get this game, sleeves necessary. Don't even play the game until you have sleeved it. Trust me, otherwise your cards are going to suffer because they are not good quality. And I say the graphic design is easy to understand. It is on the cards. You can tell what the abilities do, you can tell what the icons mean for different resources, and you turn in this for this. More on that kind of thing later. But one bit of graphic design that seriously needed some reworking was the map. The map has caused endless issues in every game I have played with players who mistakenly get the district boundaries wrong. Essentially, the board is a map outline, and all the various, I'm assuming it's Hong Kong region, I mean, I'm not a map expert of Hong Kong, but, you know, it's got the different islands and the different sort of like the land and sea boundaries, right? And they're all in black, the sea is grey, and the borderlines for those countries are grey lines, okay? Guess what colour the boundaries for the districts are that you're supposed to be surrounding with your cubes and buildings? Grey. Yeah, you can see where I'm going with this. Every single game, somebody has mistakenly thought they have filled out an entire district full of cubes because they have accidentally looked at one of the map lines and mistook it for a district boundary. And there's one particularly, it's kind of like I'm trying to see where it is on this case here, the one that really gets people. I think it's in the bottom half of the board, and I believe it's sort of central bottom half, maybe just to the left or something, but there is a line there that is so close to a boundary line or like connecting 2 bits that people have every single game mistaking it for a district boundary when it isn't. And it's not like it's thrown their strategy completely out of kilter, but it's just annoying when they think, you know, it's annoying for anybody if you think, oh yeah, I've surrounded this huge district, lots of points. You know, there's actually 7 locations there, not just 5. What? You know, it's a bit of a downer for them, and it's like, seriously, could you have not just used a different colour? Could you have not done something to make it look a little bit more pretty and a little bit clearer on the map? It just boggles my mind. So yeah, looks department, not particularly good. Graphic design, pretty good over the card, just maybe the board could have used a little bit of a reworking. But then theme is not exactly the biggest, shall we say, high point of Alexander's games in the past. You know, Isle of Skye doesn't really have much of a theme to it. I question some of the thematic elements of Great Western Trail. I mean, deck building with cows, what, ninja cows, what? You know, and several of the others, you know, Mombasa and that. You know, the theme is kind of sort of there, but not really. You certainly don't feel like what it is you're supposed to be portraying. It's mostly about the mechanics. Are they any good? Well, for the most part, actually, yes. I like the hand management in this, and that is kind of what the crux of this game is about. If you're a fan of manipulating cards in your hand and on your player board into such a way that you can create combos, this is a game you'll probably enjoy. You it's quite a hard decision to make every turn, where you can play a card in each of the 3 columns you start with, but you don't have to play all 3, although not playing 3 actions a turn is kind of really limiting yourself. And you can open up a 4th column as well. But you're going to think to yourself, well, hang on, if I put that card there, I'm not going to see it for a while, because when you reset your hand, you only get the largest column back. So it's like, well, if I put it there, yes, I can trigger this, and it fulfills the condition for this card I want to buy, or this objective I want to complete. But then I won't get it for several turns. Maybe I should put it here instead, but I really want to get him back. Should I play this card now? Oh wait, I'm going to scout with him later. Oh no. And these decisions are going through your head all the time. So the engagement level, for the most part, is pretty high. You know, the card mechanic is definitely the high point, and it certainly works well here. But there is a caveat with this. The card management system for the phase where you're playing cards and resolving them, you're technically doing this simultaneously, and a lot of the phase actions are printed on your player board, in sequence, which is really good. I like the way that they at least tried to pinpoint, like, for every player, right, you're in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Well done, good on that. But some of them can be done simultaneously, some of them can't, and you think, well, that must make the game pretty speedy then. Wrong! No, it does not. The amount of analysis paralysis that phase of playing the cards can generate, and even deciding what cards you want to buy later on in the phase, the amount of AP it gains, oh my word. You could be sat here for, no game of this has gone less than 2.5 hours, other than a 2-player game of this and solo. 3 and 4 player games, I've gone to 2.5 hours easily, closer to 3 hours. I kid you not, this game took longer to teach and play than a game of terraforming Mars with 4 players next door to us. If your game is taking longer than terraforming Mars, something's wrong with the length. And you can argue something's wrong with the players. We did have some analysis paralysis people in that game, but it lends itself to it. This is not a game you can zoom through. If you just play this on autopilot thinking you can make a decision in 2 seconds, then, well, you are not going to do well in this game, because you have got to plan ahead. And certainly the AP can, gather in that respect. This does lend itself to another problem, though, which is the player count and the player scaling. This can be played from 1 to 4 players. The solo mode in this is actually pretty good. In fact, it's actually the best way to play the game, the solo mode. You effectively do pretty much what you do in the main game with just a few little rule tweaks, but at least you get to do that cool card management system, and that's all still present. 2 players, this works pretty well as well. It's quite nice and speedy, back and forth. You're not that fussed about what your opponent's doing, and there's your problem. Because the player interaction in this game is next to none. Literally, there is only 2 ways you interact with opponents. 2. One is the districts on the board. First person to surround a district, puts their building in, and unlocks a bonus. Not the biggest level of interaction, and most of the time you're on your own corner of the board anyway, so you're only really going to clash heads with maybe 1-2 people max during the game about trying to get through a district, and most of the time you'll just think, well, he's getting that district, well, I can get this one. Fair enough, I'll just get this one then. It's the point difference is not particularly substantial between the level of, the size of the districts. So that's a basic level of interaction. And then the other one is the cards. They're on 3 rows, and if you buy a card, the row gets cheaper for another opponent, and obviously somebody might buy the card you want to buy. So that's a standard level of Euro game interaction, no different from there. But even then, that's pretty basic. Whoopee. It's never really caused that much of a problem for me, apart from the occasional time someone buys my card. Other than that, it's like, well, I've prepared to spend the money, so there you go, it hasn't made a difference. And that's it. No other interaction in this game whatsoever. You play your own cards, you collect your own cards, you complete your own objectives. These objectives have no impact on the opponent. The dice you roll at the start for resources, everybody gets the same impact from that, and whether you decide to spend trucks to go move around the resource rondelle, as you call it, faster than anyone else, doesn't make any difference to the other players. You do what you gotta do, they'll do what they gotta do, which makes playing this game with more than 2 players
entirely pointless.
Why do I need the 3rd and 4th player there? There's no reason. There's no extra interaction in the game that's present, because if I've got 2 players and I'm still fighting with my opponent, to buy cards and do the districts, So I've added a third and fourth player there. Whoopie-doo. Chances are I'm only interacting with 2 of them anyway, max. 4 locations. That fourth player, he's on the other corner of the entire board. He's not even touching me. I couldn't care less what he did. And yet he's the analysis paralysis player that's hogging up the game. I do hate it when Eurogames do this, where they sort of go, oh yeah, this is a great game for 2 to 4 players or 2 to 5 players, and all you add from another player is time. And if you're just adding time, that's not a good thing. You know, the amount of time this game takes is way too long for what it should be. This should be a 90-minute game. 2 hours max. And it does do 90 minutes, 2 hours. Probably less than that, actually, if you do 2 players, and certainly less if you do solo. Which is why, as a 1 and 2 player game, I think this is really good. As a 3 and 4 player game, though, too long, not enough interaction, and I don't even have anything interesting to look at when I'm done planning. Now, the game goes on about a campaign mode. Don't worry about it. It's a lot of games are doing this now. Rake Holt did it with a story mode. This one's doing it with a campaign mode. Everybody's got to jump on this bandwagon where we've got a campaign mode, therefore our game is great. Makes no difference. Literally, the campaign mode in this is just play a sequence of games in a row. That's it. And your score or something like that is based on your how well you did in the first game. But that's pretty much it. You are essentially, bar 1 or 2 very minor tweaks, just playing 5 games of Blackout in a row. Whoopie-doo. Great campaign, guys. Great. You know, if you're going to put a campaign in your game, at least try to spruce it up somehow. Or just don't bother putting one in and trying to make it a selling point. Seriously, I mean, people got suckered into that. I'd actually asked Essen, it's like, well, I heard it's got a campaign mode, you know, and campaigns are great. If this is what they call a campaign mode, then I'm sorry, you guys got rickrolled, honestly. Not worth it for a campaign mode, so do not buy this on that respect. But the card play is interesting. Although you are going to see the same cards pretty much every game. Some cards won't get used, but to be honest, the cards are basically just variations of each other. You know, one guy does, you know, this particular ability, so do the other copies of him. The only thing that changes is because you have to complete objectives to gain the card, they have a requisite, like, you know, this guy requires 2 medikit and 3 food before you can get him. They differ a little bit. That's pretty much it. The Fug, all 4 copies of the Fug, or however many there are, they're exactly the same ability, it's just this Fug has this requirement, this Fug has this requirement, this Fug has this requirement. So there's not a huge amount of variety in the cards either, and you will see the majority of them in every single game. Only a few of them are left out, and that's based on player scaling anyway. So it's, you know, maybe they could expand this in the future and add more cards, but I was kind of hoping that the card abilities would just be a little bit more interesting than just simply gain X amount of cubes or, you know, gain so-and-so amount of, you know, gain this ability. And on the subject of cubes, I would say luck and strategy balance is kind of hit and miss. There's a lot of strategy in this game. Don't get me wrong. Those cards you got to plan for. You've got to think about that and you've got to plan ahead. And somebody who can do that better is going to do very well at this game. But there is a luck factor in this, and it's with those dice. The dice are okay, but you roll 3 of them and you don't get doubles. So there's 3 different resources on this rondel with about, how many resources is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 resources, 3 dice. So 3 different ones are going to get rolled. And you spend these little truck tokens to move, you know, temporarily move the die round so that you can get a different resource. However, that does contribute a bit too much of a luck factor here. Because you might be gunning for, say, medikits, food and water. Great. And the dice roll and none of them come up. You might have trucks, but you've got to spend those trucks in order to get what you need, and even then you might not have, you know, the ability to do that. You might have run out of trucks. Maybe you're so far behind that spending victory points is not that great for you. But then in contrast, the guy opposite me, he's looking for the gasoline, tools and books that he's really needed. And all 3 of them come up when he's playing, you know, and he has the cards to do it. Was that skill? That's not really forward planning. That's just luck of the die roll. This guy had a power turn because the dice rolled exactly what he needed for his resources, whereas for me, it didn't. That's not strategy, that's just element of luck. And that's okay in a 60 to 90 minute game if you're going to have strategic turns. But in a game like this that's quite heavy and thinky, suddenly throwing in that fairly high level strength of luck in there for a 2.5 to 3 hour game is probably over touching it a little bit there. So take that for what it's worth, but if you're slightly apprehensive about whether there's a luck factor in this game, you should consider whether those dice are going to cause a bit of an issue for you. So that's all I can really say about Blackout. Where does it stand with me? Well, as a 1 and 2 player game, as I said, really like it. As a 3 and 4 player game though, don't want to spend that long with it, and it does suffer from bad, not a particularly strong theme, and the aesthetics not being really up to scratch, especially for Eggertspiel. I mean, come on, have you seen Camel Up 2nd Edition? You can do, and even Coimbra, I suppose, to that effect. You've seen production quality in those 2 games. What happened with this one? This seems like such a downgrade from their usual thing. So, overall, I think this one, for me, would personally, I can only really go for a 6. I think, as a game, I still like it, but I've got to play it in such a particular environment, either by myself or with 1 player max. Otherwise, I'm just going to be thinking, well, there's other games that would have more interaction or more fun things to do and more pretty things to look at. That will take 3 hours to play. If I'm going to play 3 hours for a game, I'd rather pull out like Galeris, Lisboa, Vinhos or something. One of those massive meaty Euro games. They'll be heavy, they'll keep me thinking, but I'll have more reasons to have 3 or 4 players in those, and they'll be prettier, they'll do the job. I don't see where this one would fit in. So, if you're not fussed about the player thing, then this will probably be a higher one for you, and I can see why people will enjoy this a lot. It's certainly a good card management system, but yeah, those faults, they really are pretty big faults with this game though, and so 6 about for me. So I'll await the pitchforks in the next few hours, because I'm sure they're already marching outside my door the second I say anything less than a 10 for an Alexander game. So that's it from me. I'll see you on the next review for the Broken Meeple, and remember, lights on or off, it's still only a game, so calm down guys, okay? Take care, and I'll see you next time.